Are you curious as to how I lost everything? I chuckled. That's all. My life is in ruins after my husband made a foolish joke about getting a divorce. I'm Bethany, 34, and I thought I had everything worked out. In hindsight, I ought to have recognized the warning indicators. After 10 years of marriage to Donovan, I must admit that I was completely bored. He works in logistics management and is one of those really well-organized, meticulous men who color codes the spice cabinet and assigns a particular day to mow the grass. His stability first appealed to me, a true adult, you know. However, his predictability made me want to shout after 10 years of dating. I began dissecting him behind closed doors. When he mentioned his job, I would respond, "It must be nice to have such low ambitions." "Why can't you earn more money so I don't have to work so hard?" was what I truly meant. I would also scoff at his strict, bookish parenting approach, which forbids the children from having any fun. In the meantime, I was the cool mom who would allow Emma and Tyler to enjoy ice cream before supper or stay up late. Our sexual life wasn't exactly helping either. I absolutely used intimacy as a negotiating chip, but I'm not proud of it. Had a headache when he refused to assist with the dishes? Of course. Was he too exhausted to talk about our budgetary concerns? You wager. In hindsight, I realize how deceptive that was. However, it felt like I was using my leverage at the time. The portion that's truly messed up? In public, I was known as Angel Wife. I used to boast at neighborhood cookouts about Donovan's support and how fortunate I was to have such a great spouse. "He is the foundation of our family," I would exclaim as I squeezed his hand. My friends believed that we were a match made in heaven. If only they understood how I would destroy him as soon as we got inside the car. Did you have to repeat that dumb anecdote? Or way to make me look foolish in front of everyone? God, the expression on his face when I said that. I was completely unaware that I had a network of spies. "Hey, Tyler, did your father mention me to you while you were fishing?" Or, "What did Daddy do while I was getting my hair done, Emma, sweetie?" I just wanted to be informed, you know, and I didn't consider it spying at the time. However, I was essentially making our children into informants. Emma was 13 and Tyler was 15, old enough to control but not yet mature enough to understand what I was doing. Now that I think about it, I was playing mind games all the time. I would text Donovan something like, "I'm going out for a bit, but I'll be back later," with no further information. But what if he didn't tell me his precise destination, his companion, and his expected return time? Complete collapse. What's causing your secrecy? What do you have to conceal from me? In the meantime, whenever he asked me a question, I required my space and privacy. After Donovan's company dinner, everything was different. A modest promotion had just been given to him, nothing special, just a bit more responsibility and a little more salary. I was at this average Italian restaurant for supper, and I was already. I'm irritated that I wasted my Friday night there. I began telling his coworkers these jokes after I had had a few glasses of alcohol. Everyone smiled awkwardly as Donovan sat there with his jaw clenched, saying things like, "Donovan is great with details at work. Too bad that attention doesn't extend to the bedroom." Or, "Donovan organizes your team happy hour unless you want to be home by 8:30. There was no sound during the drive home. He waited until the children were upstairs when we arrived at the house before declaring, "I want a divorce." Rather than taking him seriously, I literally laughed in his face. To which I said, "Yeah, good luck with that." I should have been informed by the expression on his face that courts always favor moms anyway. It was determination, not loss, as I had anticipated. How could I have known that he had been recording everything? Had months passed while he planned this? That all the nasty things I'd said and done had been recorded by my own children? I believed that I was in complete control of our relationship. As it happens, I had no idea what the game we were playing was. At first, I didn't trust him. Donovan had never done anything but chat. I pretended nothing had happened the following morning, made the children pancakes, inquired about Tyler's scientific endeavor, typical Saturday fare. It was not unusual for Donovan to be silent. I assumed that, as usual, he would move on from our arguments. This time, though, something was different. He worked on his laptop in our home office all day. I rolled my eyes and let him do his thing when I inquired what he was doing, and he simply said, "Research." I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of appearing worried, no matter what little tantrum he was having. In hindsight, I ought to have listened. He found his lawyer that weekend. Marianne Schaefer, who reportedly focused on father's rights issues, was not just any attorney. It took me several weeks to discover this. Naturally, the pattern for the following month was established by that weekend. All of a sudden, Donovan was working late, answering enigmatic calls, and using his laptop for hours on end. I became suspicious. Did he have a romantic partner? I felt a strange kind of excitement at the prospect. I would be the victim, the wife who has been wronged. So I activated my small espionage network. I would question him in passing as I was driving him to basketball practice. "Tyler, has Dad been acting weird around his phone lately? Does he seem happier?" Or when he left his computer unlocked, I would ask Emma to look at his browsing history. I honestly said, "It's just a game, sweetie. Mom and Dad are playing detective." As if it were enjoyable and not entirely twisted up. I began showing up at his workplace without warning after they failed to uncover anything incriminating. I'd told his visibly uneasy co-workers, "Just thought I'd surprise you for lunch." If a woman seemed too friendly, I would look for her. Look for any odd gifts or messages on his desk. Nothing. It enraged me. I also became more in control of our schedules. All of a sudden, I registered the children. Donovan had to change his job schedule to accommodate these activities. Emma needs transportation to new dance courses that, oddly, fell with his regular gym sessions. Donovan and his pals usually got together for their monthly poker game at the exact moment Tyler had tutoring. He would point out how inconvenient the scheduling was, and I would respond with this self-righteous tone, "Family must come first." In actuality, I meant that I choose our priorities. I would accuse him of disregarding the children's growth if he questioned these abrupt schedule adjustments. He usually helped me with my homework while I was on my phone, so I know it's a low blow. At the same time, I continued to be friends with Jason, my ex. I'm not a cheater, but I definitely went too far emotionally, even though nothing physical occurred. Late-night texts expressing my feelings of being misunderstood in my marriage. When I saw Donovan was buried in meetings, we met for coffee to catch up. Jason's number was saved under a female friend's name so Donovan wouldn't suspect anything if he saw texts appear. I told myself it was just wonderful to chat with someone who understood me. If any woman, including Donovan's sister, texted him after 8 p.m., I would flip out. I was blind to the obvious double standard at the time. 6 weeks after the initial divorce reference, the tipping point was reached. That week, I had been particularly cunning and purposefully neglected to inform Donovan about Tyler's championship game until the very last minute, forcing him to leave work early and still miss the first half. In front of the other parents, I placed the responsibility on him. He consistently prioritizes his work. His angry and upset expression ought to have been a red flag. After the children had gone to bed that evening, it was more than just conversation. He gave me an envelope. Divorce documents that had previously been submitted to the court were within. I chuckled once more. My second deadly error. I tossed the papers away and remarked, "This is cute. However, we are both aware of how this ends." His reaction shocked me. "We'll see about that. No judge is giving you the kids. I'm their mother." Bethany, I've been documenting everything. I was in a panic for the next week. What did everything mean to him? He could not demonstrate that I was a bad mother. Even though I spent half of the time on my phone, I was the one who attended every school function. I was in charge of scheduling the doctor's appointments, even if occasionally I gave him the incorrect time, causing him to miss them. I appeared flawless on paper. The finest offense, in my opinion, was a solid offense. I sat the children down and tried to steer the conversation the morning after he brought those documents to me. I broke my voice at the perfect moment and continued. "Your father and I are going through a difficult time." I watched their astonished expressions as I said, "He's decided he wants a divorce." Tyler merely looked at the floor, but Emma posed the query I had been waiting for. "I'm going to fight for our family, but I need you both to understand that things might get messy. Will we have to make a decision about who we live with?" This was how I got started. I reached for her hand and murmured, "Sweetheart, I would never force you to make a decision." However, the court typically allows children to remain with their or mother. It's in everyone's best interests. In retrospect, I saw how manipulative it was when I gripped her hand and added, "I just hope your father doesn't try to separate us." I was sowing seeds, getting them ready for what I knew would be a custody battle. I was unaware that Donovan had already spoken with them in a very different way. I started making calls that afternoon. I first gave my version of events to my buddies. My parents then volunteered to cover my legal bills right away when I said, "He just sprung this on me. No warning. I'm devastated. The poor kids." I even gave Emma's teacher a call to update her on the home situation, making sure to bring up the possibility that Emma's academic performance would be impacted by Donovan's anger management problems. Was looking up divorce rates and custody agreements on Google in the interim. Everything I read supported my preconceived notion that, in the great majority of situations, moms are granted primary custody. I only required an understanding judge, ideally a woman who would see the unique tie between a mother and her children. I promptly located Sharon Keller, a lawyer who is renowned for her aggressiveness in divorce proceedings. I portrayed myself as the victim of an emotionally distant husband who was deserting his family throughout our meeting. The years of ridiculing him, the manipulation, and the ongoing control were not mentioned. Why would I? That had nothing to do with my story. Maternal custody is typically preferred by courts, particularly when a girl is about to enter adolescence. Sharon told me, "Unless there's evidence of abuse or neglect, you have a very strong position." I should have been more concerned about the evidence of abuse or neglect. However, I was certain that Donovan couldn't use anything against me. Over the years, I might have said some hurtful things, but that was just the nature of marriage. Everybody battles. In the heat of the moment, everyone says things they don't mean to, don't they? That confidence was destroyed in the first mediation session. Mary Ann, Donovan's lawyer, arrived with a thick folder of evidence, including printed text messages in which I had disparaged Donovan to friends, emails with the children's teachers, in which he had been attempting to participate and I had excluded him, and a thorough calendar listing all the instances in which I had misinformed him about the children's activities. The recordings, which were lawful in our state with one party's consent, were the most destructive. Donovan had apparently been filming our arguments for months. "You think the kids respect you? They tell me everything. You know all the ways. You disappoint them." I was on the phone with a friend in another recording, and my voice was brimming with disdain. Sitting in that sterile conference room, listening, I said, "Of course I didn't tell him about the parent-teacher conference. He'd just embarrass me like last time. I told him it was next week." Show my manipulations to my own voice. I could feel the ground moving under me. Things weren't going as planned. With every fresh piece of information that surfaced, my lawyer's expression grew more uneasy. After the third tape, Sharon whispered to me, "We need to discuss settlement. Options." "No," I hissed in response. The worst was still to come, though. "I'm not settling. I'm their mother." The most devastating evidence was kept for last by Donovan's attorney. Quotes from Tyler and Emma about how I had used them to spy on their father, how I had scared and coerced them, and how they had heard me make fun of their father numerous times. I could tell everything I needed to know from the mediator's expression. I was not having success with this. Absolutely not. Mediation was a huge failure. I was scared as we made our way to court. My attorney attempted to warn me about what was about to happen, but I disregarded her advice. Here, I was still the victim in my thoughts. It was Donovan, not me, who was destroying our family. During our preparation session, Sharon told me that Catherine Jameson was the judge assigned to our case. She has a reputation for being meticulous and insensitive to parents who want to distance their kids from the other parent. But I truly believed my own lie, so I rebelled and never did. That it was always their bond with Donovan that I supported. Even as I said the words, they tasted fake. Sharon simply glanced at me before turning to her notes. "We need to be realistic about our approach here. The evidence Donovan has presented is concerning." I rejected her warning. What was it she knew? She hadn't experienced my life or my annoyances. I was the mother anyway. In family court, that had some weight. When I chose my most conservative outfit on the first day of hearings, I persuaded myself that, at least. The courtroom was more intimate and smaller than I had anticipated. In her 60s, Judge Jameson was a stern-looking woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. I attempted to look her in the eye, but she was preoccupied. There is no pity. Marianne and Donovan sat across the aisle, and he seemed more assured than I had seen him in a long time. I was enraged. Who was this individual? The man who would back down in every conflict was nowhere to be found. Who would take any action to maintain harmony? Opening speeches, evidence submissions, and character witnesses were all part of the methodical start to the proceedings. According to Donovan's brother's testimony, I made fun of Donovan during family get-togethers. I had relied on my best friend Lisa for comfort, but her well-crafted responses were incongruous. Nothing could have prepared me for the children's testimonials, but I felt deceived. Although the court clerk read aloud their written testimonies and placed them into evidence, the judge insisted on having a private conversation with them in her chambers. Tyler's statement was devastating. Mom would ask me to check Dad's phone when he was in the shower. She said it was a game, but it felt wrong. When I told her I didn't want to do it anymore, she said I was being disloyal to her. Emma's was worse. Mom told me Dad didn't come to my dance recital because he was too busy, but I saw the text where she gave him the wrong date. When I asked her about it, she said I must have misunderstood and made me feel crazy. I sat there frozen as my parenting was dissected and found wanting. Judge Jameson watched me closely during the readings, probably looking for remorse or shame. I gave her neither. Instead, I silently fumed, planning how I'd confront the kids later for their betrayal. My own testimony was a disaster. Marianne was methodical, trapping me in contradictions and half-truths. She would play a recording of me saying something cruel, then ask if I'd said it. If I denied it, she had the evidence right there. If I admitted it, I looked abusive. Mrs. Walters, did you or did you not tell your daughter that her father doesn't really care about her activities? That's taken out of context, I protested. It's a yes or no question. Yes, but I was just upset that day. And on February 12th of this year, did you intentionally give Mr. Walters the wrong time for your son's championship game? I might have mixed up the times. According to this text exchange with your friend Lisa, you stated, and I quote, "Gave Don the wrong time for Tyler's game. He'll show up when it's almost over and look like the bad guy." End quote. Is that accurate? Each question was another nail in my coffin. By the end of my testimony, I was sweating through my carefully chosen outfit, and Judge Jameson's expression had hardened from neutral to unmistakably cold. The final blow came from the custody evaluator, Dr. Reynolds. His report was comprehensive and damning. In my professional opinion, Mrs. Walters has engaged in a pattern of parental alienation and manipulation that has negatively impacted the children's relationship with their father. She shows little insight into how her behaviors affect others and minimal capacity for change without significant therapeutic intervention. When the court adjourned to await the judge's decision, Sharon didn't offer any reassurances. We both knew what was coming. I spent that weekend in a state of panic, alternating between rage at Donovan for doing this to me and desperate attempts to connect with the kids who had been staying with him during the proceedings. My calls went unanswered. My texts received brief, formal responses. Yes, I'm fine. No, I don't need anything. They were slipping away from me and I couldn't stop it. 3 days later, we returned to court for the judgment. I wore my most expensive outfit and had my hair professionally done, as if looking perfect would somehow change the facts that had been laid bare. Judge Jameson didn't even glance at my appearance as she delivered her ruling. In the matter of custody regarding the minor children, Tyler and Emma Walters, this court finds that their best interest will be served by granting primary physical custody to the Donovan Walters. The words hit me like a physical blow. This couldn't be happening. Judges always sided with mothers. Everyone knew that. It was the one certainty I'd clung to throughout this entire process. But Judge Jameson wasn't finished. Mrs. Walters will be granted supervised visitation twice monthly, pending completion of a parental alienation awareness program and individual therapy with a court-approved counselor. Supervised visitation! Like I was some kind of danger to my own children. I started to protest, but Sharon gripped my arm, silencing me. Additionally, the judge continued, her voice cutting through my shock. Mrs. Walters will pay child support in the amount of $1,200 monthly based on the income calculations provided to this court. I would be paying him child support. The room started spinning. This was backward, upside down, impossible. I was the mother. The children belonged with me. That's how it worked. That's how it had always worked. This court takes extremely seriously the documented pattern of parental alienation exhibited by Mrs. Walters. The psychological harm to children when one parent systematically undermines their relationship with the other parent is substantial and long-lasting. Judge Jameson looked directly at me, then her eyes cold. The recordings, text messages, and testimony presented to this court paint a disturbing picture of manipulation and emotional abuse, not only toward Mr. Walters, but toward the children themselves. This behavior will not be tolerated or rewarded in my courtroom. I barely heard the rest of her ruling. Something about family therapy, reevaluation in 6 months, educational decisions. My entire world had collapsed. I'd lost my children. I'd lost my home. I'd lost the financial support I'd counted on. As we left the courtroom, I saw Donovan hugging the kids in the hallway. Their faces showed relief, not sadness. They weren't devastated about not living with me. They weren't crying or begging to stay with their mother. They looked happy. That's when the truth finally began to penetrate my carefully constructed reality. Maybe I had been the problem all along, but that moment of clarity didn't last. By the time I reached the parking lot, I'd reconstructed the narrative. The judge was biased, Donovan had manipulated the kids, the system was broken, everyone had conspired against me. It wasn't my fault. I called my mother from the car, sobbing. They gave him everything. The judge was completely unfair. She didn't even listen to my side. "Oh, sweetie," my mother said, her voice tight. "We'll appeal." My father's voice interrupted over their speakerphone, saying, "Bethany, stop. We'll fight this." Donovan sent us the recordings, which your mother and I listened to. We love you, but you need help. Even my parents were turning against me. I hung up and screamed into the empty car, pounding the steering wheel until my hands hurt. The following weeks were a blur of rage and self-pity. I moved into a small, overpriced apartment. I could barely afford the treatment. I showed up for my first supervised visitation with the children, but it was awkward and strained. Emma barely spoke to me, and Tyler kept checking the time, obviously counting the minutes until he could leave. "They've poisoned you against me," I accused when the supervisor stepped out briefly. "Mom, stop," Tyler said, sounding so much older than his 15 years. "We were there. We witnessed your treatment of Dad." Emma looked up from her phone and said, "You told me Dad forgot my birthday last year, but I found the card he bought me hidden in your drawer with a gift card inside." The accusation hung in the air, and I had no defense. I had done exactly what she described, convinced that making Donovan look bad would make the kids love me more. How could I have been so wrong about everything? The supervised visits continued, each one more uncomfortable than the last. I began the court-mandated therapy, but I approached it as something to endure rather than a chance for personal development. The therapist saw right through me right away. "Bethany, do you understand why the court has restricted your access to your children?" During our third session, Dr. Levine said, "Because the system is rigged against mothers who stand up for themselves." I automatically responded, "That's exactly why you're here," Dr. Levine sighed. "Until you can acknowledge the harm your behaviors caused, you cannot begin to repair your relationships with your children or develop healthier patterns." I wanted to walk out, but I couldn't. Completing therapy was my only path back to unsupervised visitation. So I sat there, nodding along to Dr. Levine's lectures while thinking about what I'd make for dinner. The whole thing was a waste of time. I wasn't the problem here. The system was. 3 years have passed since that completely unfair court decision. I'm still in the same cramped apartment, barely making ends meet. The ridiculous child support payments eat a huge chunk of my income, especially since I lost my job last year. My boss was totally unreasonable about me needing time off for court appearances. Some people just don't understand what it's like to be a mother fighting for her kids. The appeals went nowhere because the system is rigged against mothers who stand up for themselves. 3 different judges reviewed the case, and all of them sided with Donovan. One even had the nerve to suggest that my continued denial of responsibility was proof they made the right decision. As if I'm supposed to just accept being robbed of my children because some judge says so. I've jumped through all their hoops. Therapy, parenting classes, supervised visits, the whole humiliating circus. But it hasn't made any difference. Tyler, now 18, stopped coming to see me once he turned 16. He claims it's his choice, but I know Donovan poisoned his mind against me. Emma, 16, still comes once a week. She's cold and distant, always checking her phone, barely acknowledging me. That's Andrea's influence, no doubt. Oh yes, Andrea Donovan's perfect new wife, the children's book illustrator who works from home and has all the time in the world to play happy family. She's not even that pretty, all natural and makeup-free like she thinks she's special. I've seen their social media posts, her trying to replace me, doing Emma's hair, baking cookies with them, going on family vacations. Those should be my memories. Those are my children. Donovan's whole life improved after the divorce, which is just so typical. He got another promotion, started some side business that's apparently taking off, even lost weight, and bought a new wardrobe. Meanwhile, I'm struggling to keep the lights on. Where's the justice in that? He was nothing before me. I built him up, pushed him to be better, and this is how he repays me, by stealing my life and giving it to someone else. Last month was Emma's high school graduation. I had to sit in the back of the auditorium like some distant relative while Donovan and his replacement wife had front row seats with their perfect little blended family. After the ceremony, I tried to give Emma a gift and tell her how proud I was. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," I said, fighting back tears that were absolutely genuine. "And I miss you so much." "Dad never turned us against you," Emma said, glaring at me icily. "Mom, I appreciate that you came, but I need you to understand something." She paused to take a long breath before continuing. After everything I had given up for her, Tyler joined us at that point, hovering protectively next to his sister as if I posed a threat. "We were pawns to you, Mom, not people with feelings." The ingratitude was unfathomable. I had fought for 3 years to be included in their lives, and this is how they talk to me. "That's not fair." "I always put you first," I complained. "I did everything for this family. The one who left is your father. It was he that caused us to split ways." "Dad taught us what real love looks like," Emma said with this self-righteous tone she's developed. "It's not about control or manipulation." Who does she think she is, lecturing me about love? I'm her mother. I carried her for 9 months. I was there for every scraped knee and school project while Donovan was working late, and now she thinks she can judge me because of some lies her father told her. "You'll understand when you're older," I told her, trying to keep my composure. "When you have children of your own, you'll see what it's like to have them taken from you." "That's exactly what I'm talking about," Tyler muttered. Always the victim, never responsible. They walked away then, back to Donovan and Andrea and their fake perfect family. They didn't even take the gift I'd spent 2 weeks' worth of grocery money on. So here I am, the victim of a system that claims to protect families but really just rewards men who can afford better lawyers. A cautionary tale for any woman who thinks the courts will have her back. Everyone told me that judges favor mothers in custody battles. Everyone was wrong. I lost everything that mattered. My home, my financial security, my place in my children's lives, all because the system is broken. Donovan played the game better than me. He collected his little pieces of evidence, painted me as the villain, and turned my own flesh and blood against me. But I'm not giving up. One day my children will see through his manipulation. One day they'll understand that everything I did, every harsh word, every little game, every strategy was because I loved them more than he ever could. One day they'll come back to me, and I'll be waiting because I'm their mother, and nothing, not some biased judge, fake stepmom, or even their own temporary confusion, can change that. Next time I run into Donovan, I won't be caught off guard. and I definitely won't be laughing. Some things aren't funny anymore.